What's going on, guys? HaVoC back with a video, and today I'm going to go ahead and discuss the top 10 best cards in Clash Royale according to their usage rate. Supercell buffs and nerfs cards all the time, and oftentimes cards are okay, but some are used way more than others. Please keep in mind though that if you don't see your favorite card, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that more people prefer these other cards. Now before we get into the video, I just wanted to go ahead and announce that I will be doing another giveaway for the month of February. If you did not win the January one, then I truly apologize. But we're going to be doing these every month, and I soon may be able to be doing them every 2 weeks. So stay tuned. But for this month's giveaway, all you have to do is comment and like to be entered, and that should be it. So moving over to number 10 is going to be the Mega Minion. But how come it's number 10? A few months ago, I made a video on the top 5 cards in the game, and the Mega Minion was like the first one on that list. But after 2 balance changes, including hit speed and damage, it's gone a little downhill, but not that far. And that's why it's still among the top 10 used cards in the game at around 23.1% usage rate. The Mega Minion is usually the perfect choice to counter large troops, and before he came along, usually people just picked up the Musketeer or the regular minions. The Mega Minion is a fairly new card, and it may not seem like it because the meta is so deeply dependent on a card like him, or her, you know. We don't really know if they have a... You know what, let's just move on. Next up is going to be the Hog Rider. The Hog Rider is one of the most popular cards and is usually best used in Hog Cycle decks. These are decks that carry cheap but effective cards so that you can keep deploying your Hog Rider over and over. But he's not so annoying as he was back then. Back a few months ago, or maybe more than a few months ago, the meta literally evolved around the Hog Rider, and Supercell was forced to nerf him because of that. But he's still a highly used card and quickly does a fair amount of damage for just 4 elixir. Also, the great thing about the Hog Rider is that the fact that he doesn't get distracted by troops, so if a giant or any other troop besides a building is placed to distract him, he's just gonna go straight past him, and this can be a game-changing ability. Currently, as of when this video is uploaded though, he's been placed in around 25.8% in all decks. Number 8 is the Giant. The Giant has been in the game since the start and has been a troop in Clash of Clans since 2012. We can say he's a 5-year-old guy with a beard, of course. In Clash Royale, it's had many ups and downs, but it's always been the go-to tank and will always be. Unless Supercell kills it, but that won't happen because everyone loves a Giant. In lower arenas, it's actually the strongest tank you can have, and it's also fairly cheap. It can do wonders in the overtime, and on the other hand, higher arenas use it less, but it's definitely not a weak card. In fact, it's used more than the Royal Giant, Golem, Ice Golem, and Lava Hound. So, it's the most used tank in the entire game. The main reason being is it just walks to the tower instead of staying across the bridge and do lots of damage per hit. It's also fairly cheap at only 5 elixir. That's 1 cheaper than the Royal G, 2 than the Lava Hound, and 3 from the Golem. I think it's safe to say that the Giant is the best tank in the game so far, and it's being placed in around 26% of all decks. Number 7 on this list is going to be the Musketeer. Being one of the first cards in the game, the Musketeer has always been good. Supercell never had to kill it because it was never an OP card in the first place. It's a well-balanced and it's a very popular mid-range unit. Unlike the 3 Musketeers where it costs 9 elixir and gets wrecked by a lot of things, the regular one only costs 4 elixir and does similar damage to the Mega Minion and the Hog Rider. It's also a cheap card, which is the reason why it's usually paired with a tank. Not only that, but it's also a very nice card to take out air units at ease. But at the moment, the Musketeer is currently being used in around 27.3% of all decks. On to number 6, we have the Minions. At 3 elixir, it has to be the best bang for your buck. Or elixir in this case. For a cheap card, it's great that the minions can't be taken out by a zap, which is what has made the card survive along with the high damage they do when they are being hit. Even if they're being hit by a tower, it still takes a tower 2 hits each, and if there's no elixir to defend against them, then they're going to chip away on that tower. It's also a great way to take out tanks. They're small, but when there's 3, they do massive damage and they can take out a tank with ease. There's not much to say about them though, as they have been a favorite card since the launch of the game and currently holds a total of 27.5% in all decks. Number 5, we have the Log. The Log was introduced on July 4th, the same day we got tournaments and a few other legendaries. In fact, the Log is the only legendary in this top 10 list. It's like a lot of people have the Log nowadays. If you don't though, then don't worry, you'll get it soon. If this list was a top 15, the next legendary would have been the Ice Wizard at number 14 with a 17.4 usage rate. Supercell killed the Log once, but they also made it so strong this other time. Nowadays, it's pretty balanced. Recently though, it got nerfed and they decreased the damage by 4% and the knockback effect from 1.5 tiles to only 1 tile. This didn't really affect the usage rate though, because a lot of people didn't really seem to care about the balance changes. I personally love the log and it's well worth the insanely cheap 2 elixir. It's cheaper than the arrows, yes, but at least they do air damage, and this one doesn't. But obviously players prefer the log instead of the arrows because they're at 19%. And the log is at 27.5%. Moving over to number 4, we have the Elite Barbarians. Recently, these 2 tough guys were featured in my video where I talked about 4 bad cards Supercell tried to fix, but ended up making them extremely powerful. After that video was published though, the Elite Barbarians got a nerf of 4% less damage, 4% less hit points, and 0.1 decrease in hit speed. And the effects were drastic, like this card was at 50% usage rate, and now it's at 28.8%. But that didn't stop it because it's currently the 3rd used card in the game at around 28.8% in all decks. The Elite Barbarians are still powerful, but I think they're about right and don't need any more nerfs or buffs. There's many ways to counter them already, and obviously players still love them, so yeah. Number 3 is the Skeleton Army. This card was already in the game in the soft launch like most other cards on this list. Not too long ago, this card was placed in over 50% of all decks. But that was before the Executioner. Now it's dropped a little bit, but it's far from bad. The Skeleton Army became a popular choice and no one really knows why. The last time it's got a stat change was back in October, and in October it definitely wasn't as high as it is right now. But I guess times really do change. It's usually a great option to counter cards like the Golem, Giant, and of course the Elite Barbarians. I think that's why it became popular, the Elite Barbarians, but I don't know. But that's besides the point. It's been the go-to counter to Giants for lower arenas, and now it's among the top 3 used cards in the game at around 42.1% in all decks. Number 2 on this list is going to be the Fireball. This was also in the start of the game. The Fireball is one of my favorite cards to use, especially paired with the Zap. You can easily take out a whole army of troops, and if the cards are low level, you don't even have to use the Zap spell. It's a very popular option when it comes to spells, and it has been since the beginning of time. Not much change in stats have occurred, but I think it's because the Fireball is just a perfect card for the longest time. There's not much to cover on the Fireball, as it's a self-explanatory card that does direct damage. It's easy to use and you can't go wrong while using it, unless you, by mistake, throw it in the river. Currently, the Fireball is being placed in around 43.3% of all decks. And finally, on to number 1, it's going to be the Zap spell. This card was introduced in the soft launch in the beginning of the year. In the beginning of 2017, this year, the Zap reached its highest usage rate at a massive 60%. No other card has reached 60%. And it's no surprise the Zap is number 1. It can stun a whole skeleton army, and it used to take out a goblin barrel. Used to. But just because you can't take out small troops doesn't mean the Zap turned into a bad card. It's a very cheap and powerful option for a lot of things, and the most popular ones is going to be lowering the health of other troops and making most cards retarget or reset. It can also freeze troops for a quick second, which can sometimes make a huge difference whether you believe it or not. As of now though, the card is being used in around 49.1% of all decks, which in total it has dropped around 10% after the nerf, but people are still loving the Zap. So guys, that is pretty much it for my list on the top 10 used cards in the game. If you guys disagree or agree, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions. And yeah. So anyways, peace out YouTube, and see you on the next one. Peace!